exciting. I'm so excited to talk about Lysistrata.
Yeah, okay, I love our book club.
This whole book is about a struggle of power between men and women. The women at first have basically no power at all. The men are out at war. They've been at the Peloponnese War for literally a year, and they just keep like going and going. They're spending all their funds, and the women are like, the only way we're going to get their attention is if we stop having sex with them. Which was true. It got their attention. The main thing we want to talk about too is the time, like, at this time, women were so important to society because all of the men were off at work doing their thing. They were so important to society, but their actual, like, value, their actual worth was zilch. Like, they were not respected.
Right, they were like expected to just like be there and like available.
And it's taken for granted, and it's like kind of like how when it was World War II and like with
That's literally what I was gonna say. How they all go into the workforce and rosy, and then they come back.
Ended up carrying like society and carrying like the entire like industrial.
Like so many women went back to work and like worked in the factories, did all that. Like childcare like started becoming a thing that
blue collar work.
Right, and then the men came back and they were like, and then the men were pissed. They were like, give us our jobs back, and the women were just expected to step back and be like, okay, that's like the 50s housewives sort of thing happened again.
They should have Lysistrata in World War II.
They should have been like, sorry, like this is our job now, like find another one.
So the exaggeration like that we kind of want to go from, what I was thinking was about the talk with like the magistrate.
They go away and then they don't listen to when their wives try to actually talk to them, which is like the whole entire spawn of the issues, that they like can't listen and then don't take anything that their wives or women say as like truth. They're like, they don't listen to it. So
and then the women are trying to put their point across, especially like in the beginning after they do their oath, and then Lysistrata is explaining to like the chorus of old men, and they're all pissed off because like they won't listen to her because they just want their way. And so that's like putting her and the women in like an uncomfortable situation where they don't really know what to do. So that's why they end up taking away like anything from men, you know?
Yeah, and I think that exaggeration of their roles is what's really meant to be focused on, because like during that time period, that's maybe not to that extent because, you know, hence the exaggeration, but that's how men were treating women. And so like, yeah, the exaggeration is meant so that you can focus on that. And that's how it's also tying back to making social commentary about, you know, what was going on during that time.
I think the exaggeration is important because it's usually, as with things like that, like it's so ridiculous that it actually makes you see the issue a lot, like it magnifies the issue and makes people on the other side able to view the issue without getting offended, because it's so ridiculous. It obviously can't be applying exactly to them. They're not that ridiculous, you know?
How do like the gender roles take part in the satire and all that?
I feel like the way that each gender acts, like the way that they're perceived in the novel, you know, whether it's exaggeration or reversal, you know, that reversal irony, it's funny because like the things that they're doing are ridiculous, but you know, it brings that social commentary about like why is it so funny that they're reversing roles or that they're acting this way. So it has the reader think about that, and you know,
like how it actually is in like real life.
Yeah, like they're like, oh, like that light bulb goes off for them that, oh, this is actually how it is. And you know, that brings up a whole other conversation about, well, if this is so funny to me written down, like why isn't it funny to me when I see it, you know, in day-to-day life, and like what does that mean about our society?
Yeah, that like whole social commentary situation, which really like directs it back to satire, where it's like, yeah, it's kind of covered up by comedy, but like the real underneath layer is like change.
What starts the you know, the discussion about there are multiple advertisements that are like, oh, like it's like a side-by-side of women and men doing the same exact job, you know, whether it's like low labor or high labor, and then at the end like it compares their salary rates. So I feel like that's an example because, you know,
it like puts it right in front of your face, like,
and like it's less of like Horatian satire. It's more like the juvenilia.
Because like
it's so direct.
then if you're like a man looking at that, you like can actually compare and like put yourself in that situation. Like, what if I was being paid less? You know?
Right. And then there's high levels of derision with that because men feel like, oh no, women aren't paid less, like blah blah blah, and they'll avoid the conversation. So that's where that level of derision kind of comes in, and those commercials have to be careful on how they're trying to portray this message.
That's why Lysistrata and like not only the reversal but satire, exaggeration, the whole thing is a really good format for inciting change and for being effective.
The other thing too is like it's written by a man. Like this was written by a man, so like hi.
Okay, so with that thing, when you're saying like they're explaining, right? So they're like explaining like why they're actually good. Like they are not like a part of this representation of like bad men or whatever. And then you see like in the chorus of men where Lysistrata's like, yo, we are done with you. All the guys are like, but like we are helping. Like, what are you talking about? And it's frustrating for the women because they're like, okay, we're trying to explain ourselves, and you're just like backfiring. And that's frustrating because there's no like absorption of like their ideas,
So like with the reversal thing, like the textual evidence for that, this is something that I also like did a little bit of research on. So when they go to the let me find the quote. It's on page 14 when the chorus of old men start talking. They're talking about how they're at the Acropolis and they're like, hi, the men basically bring home the bread, like all this. They're telling women like, you don't have a right to do this. You eat our bread, live in our houses, daring nowadays to lay hands on the holy image of the goddess, to seize the Acropolis and draw bars and bolts to keep any from entering. The funny part about that, so the women were taking the oath inside the shield, over the image in the Acropolis, which is supposed to be like where men do like holy oaths and stuff like that to begin wars, for politics, all this stuff. So only men did that back then. So that's the reversal, is that the women are now doing it and starting their own war, like taking their own oath. The funny part about that is that the goddess that they're laying the oath over, doing the oath over, is literally like for women's rights.
Right.
Like she was like, it's literally supposed to be like the goddess of, I don't even remember if she was actually the goddess of women.
Oh no, okay, so it totally is.
Demeter's the goddess of like the fields, like what is it? Not hay, the fields, like.
So she's
no,
like
so the goddess that they're telling the women not to take the oath over is literally like the goddess that represents women. Like it's basically blasphemy to the women that they're not allowed to take the oath over them. Mm-hmm. So the reversal is funny in the fact that the women are now starting the war. But if you like look deeper, which is this is probably something the ancient Greeks knew about. They're doing this over the representation of women.
It wasn't a satirical reversal, it was actual reversal in real life.
The derision in that.
Oh my god.
Sure. Like a full, 10, a full 10.
Literally.
A full 10. The comedy.
This is crazy.
The comedy from the irony in that. A full 10.
It literally is funny though, because it's like a laugh out loud kind of situation. Like,
all these men in the nude performing as women, like, oh my god, no, what am I gonna do when I see an erection? Like, can't. Like,
no, exactly. Like, it's so funny. Like, they literally are portrayed as men. Like, these men are playing these characters, and then the women are like, oh my god, you see my man coming across the here. Like, when she's looking through the window, and she's like, oh my god, that's my man. Like, are you
there's also like so much comedy in that one part where he's like brings her baby and he's like, we need you, and she's like, okay, like we need a bed and we need this and we need that, and then like turns him away and like he doesn't get sex. Like that is so funny to me. Like the comedy in that, a full 10.
It's so funny. Like it's wild.
It's funny how many parallels to like actual pop culture like this has.
Oh yeah,
This was so freaking long ago.
I know.
And now it's like so relevant.
This is crazy ahead of its time because not only is it about something so taboo and it's women fighting, it's literally women boycotting sex, even though they explicitly enjoy it and love it in this book, which is like, or in this play, which I think is so ahead of its time because I don't know, I just wouldn't expect.
I feel like
we're gonna make our own little Lysistrata strike, guys.
Okay, how long have we been talking? 21 minutes.
Alright, now we're back better than ever.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Let's Talk talk Lysistrata. I wanted to talk about the expectations of women in society and like the roles that they play and why like they felt the need to go on this strike in the first place. As we were saying earlier, when the men were at war, the women were kind of like expected and just like forced by circumstance to take over a majority of the roles in society. And they, even though they were doing this and taking on so much responsibility, they had like little to no say in actually what went on with like any political decisions or any war conversation at all. Like the men would just be like they would try, they would attempt, and then like the men would just be like, no, war is a man's business, war is not a woman's business, so they would just dismiss it, which is where the whole strike had to come in. I think that women, we have our own Lysistrata moments, because like even now with the Me Too moment, it's getting like women try to speak up, like with Anita Hill 10 years ago, the same thing with the Supreme Court, like she was sexually assaulted and then her allegations weren't believed, weren't charged, and then a justice got to go through. And the same history repeated itself 10 years later. So it kind of just goes to show how little progress women have had societally, like, and politically, and just like as like human beings in the world. But I think that like it's kind of nice because I think this play would be really effective now. Like so it's social commentary, since it's so prevalent. Like I think it would be really effective to be performed now by men or women. I think it would just be really effective because we are still talking about the same things and like still need some sort of big force or some sort of ridiculous like thing to get people to realize like how things are, because exaggeration, reversal, all of that stuff is sometimes necessary so people can detach from it, take it a little less serious, and then be like, oh yeah, we're dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing the ratings, and we're gonna have the 10s over here. And I would say like, let's say like the parts that we thought were the funniest, and the parts that we thought were like the truest, and we're gonna do 10s over here. We're gonna rate them to like right on the scale.
So I think something that would get a 10 is already in the beginning when Lysistrata is trying to explain to her sisters like
that.
No, yes. She's like, okay, like she's making all these great points, and they're all like, yes, queen, like you're
like no matter what we got you.
Yeah, and she's like, okay, but like you have to listen. Like this is the one condition. I'm like, we're already here for it. Like there's nothing you could say that would push us away. And she's like, okay, no sex. And they're like, oh.
They all started walking away. She's like, no, wait, where are you going? That is so funny.
They're like, I have to go iron the sidewalk. I'm really
right. I'm busy today.
So like we're all basically giving that one a 10. The truth is like throughout the whole thing.
It really is.
I think most of it is true. Anytime that there is a point of comedy, basically there's truth in it throughout like this whole book. But derisive, like the derisive parts. Normally, the funniest parts are the most offensive. The fact that old men were probably respected in the society, because in ancient societies, elders were always respected, and then on top of that, they're men. And then in this book, it's like offensive because they're shown as like bumbling, can't even start a fire, or like huffing and puffing up the hill to the Acropolis. Like that's probably so offensive, but it was also like one of the funniest parts.
Like, but I think that it wasn't really offensive. Like, I mean, it was offensive to men and women to an extent, because like it just pointed out flaws, like societal flaws, and did it in an exaggerated way. But I mean, I don't think it necessarily was like incorrectly, like it would offend any other grouping.
Wow, beautiful conversation.
Yes. So that's it for our podcast today. We're saying goodbye to Ly-sisters of Lysistrata. Have fun and don't have sex.
Yeah.
Wow.